Friendship. It's something we often take for granted when life is full of people and activity. But for many women over 50, the landscape of friendship begins to shift. There are so many reasons why you might suddenly find yourself needing or wanting new friends. Maybe you've moved and started over in a new community. Maybe working from home part-time or stepping away from work altogether has quietly reduced your daily connections. Perhaps years of caring for others, whether that's children, partners, parents, have left less time for nurturing your own friendships. And of course, COVID made many of our worlds smaller. Some circles simply never expanded back. Or maybe as you've grown and changed, you've noticed that your old friendships don't feel quite as aligned with the person you're becoming now. Whatever the reason, you're not alone. So many of us are rethinking what friendship looks like, what we need from it, and how to build again with meaning and ease. In today's episode, we ask, what does it really take to make new friends or be truly a good friend ourselves after 50? I'm Sue West. Welcome to Flourish After 50. Today I'm joined by my friend, Sarah Hopkins. Sarah and I first met through Connected Women, a community for women over 50 established to support women to connect socially. We each joined as a way of making new friends for ourselves, and we found ourselves becoming more active contributors in the community over time. She in Sydney facilitating an online support group called Help, Heard, Hug, or the 3 H's, and me in Melbourne facilitating the Wisdom Well, which was a monthly discussion group for women looking for deeper connections. We were introduced to help us find our bearings in these new roles and spent many hours talking about friendship, community, and all the big life stuff. And somewhere along the way, we became great friends ourselves. Sarah is a J. Shetty certified life coach with a background in mental health. She worked in a community mental health team for the NHS in the UK before completely uprooting her life in 2015 to start fresh in Australia. That takes guts, a sense of humour, and a wildly optimistic belief that Google Maps and good intentions could build a new life. These days, she helps women find more fulfilment and connection in their lives. And when she's not coaching, you'll probably find her on the pickleball court, totally obsessed, slightly competitive, and loving every minute of it. Sarah's the perfect mix of thoughtful, funny, and real. And I know you're going to love this conversation with Sarah today. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you so much. And that introduction really made me giggle. Thank you.
Let's go back to the place where we met, Sarah, Connected Women. Connected Women was a brainchild of a group in, I think, Western Australia who post-COVID were looking for ways to support women over 50 to connect socially. So it was this brand new innovation that was tested and piloted in WA, in Perth, and went gangbusters and then spread to the other states. And as I said, you're in Sydney and I'm in Melbourne. And it doesn't exist anymore, but the legacy of it does in terms of thousands of women having made friends and connected with each other. Do you remember why you first joined Connected Women?
I think for me, it was about socially finding it really difficult to connect with women my own age that, within the suburbs of Sydney, I tended to find people kept themselves to themselves. And unless you were doing something within your community, you didn't have the opportunity. So I jumped on board as soon as I saw this. I can't remember if it was through Facebook or Instagram, something like that. And I was like, oh, have a go. What's the worst thing that can happen? And jumped on board and just thought, right, I'm going to have a go and see what happens, basically. Just as simple as that.
And what was it like for you when you first went along to events and started meeting women?
It was interesting. It was nice because it was local. And then the venues, we went basically to a local coffee shop. So I felt safe. I felt secure. Unsure who I was meeting because the profiles weren't huge. It wasn't like it was a dating website or anything like that. It was just a few one-liners from people. So you were going in very cold. So it was like that initial meeting and you all sat around a table almost like weighing each other up, but it was very easily something that I felt very comfortable with and the people that I was talking to. And funny enough, like one of the first people I met, I am still very good friends with now. So, a very valuable experience. It was amazing.
Going back to when you joined Connected Women, what was going on for you at the time? And do you remember why you joined?
Primarily, I'd moved to Australia from the UK in 2015. Then I moved to Melbourne and then moved back to Sydney again. So I was jumping around all over the place. And it was having the opportunity to make friends, being isolated at home after COVID, and then moving, and then having a society, a suburb that I live in that is, it's not active unless, say, you have children or you're going out or you're meeting people. It can be very much behind closed doors. So Connected Women was that opportunity to meet people. So it's kind of like a dating website, but for women that you're not going to date, but it's like a friendship website, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and for those who don't know about Connected Women, it was they generated from a website where you signed up and you put a little profile up, and then the owners of the website created a whole lot of events and you signed up to attend. So if you were going for breakfast on a Saturday morning, you could see who else was going to be there. And over time, you started to go along to events with the same women and develop some friendships, and might also then go to events or experiences outside of your neighbourhood and meet completely new people. So it was a really delightful way to get to know people. Initially, I was getting ads for Connected Women on Facebook, and every now and then I'd open it up and go, oh, what is this thing? And then kind of back away. And then I think the thing that got me over the line was that it had a 7-day or maybe 1 month free trial. And I thought, okay, I'm going to join this and see what it's about. And I guess for me, what was happening to me at the time was that we were not long past COVID, and COVID lockdowns for me in Melbourne had meant my world had become pretty small. And I'd found coming out of COVID that kind of getting back into friendships was a bit sluggish for me. My partner's career was really taking off in a different direction, and she was traveling more, and the kids were getting older and didn't need me as much. And I found myself at home a lot. And at first that was amazing. And then it was a bit lonely, and it was a funny time for me because I felt a bit of shame about that sense of loneliness, as though there was something wrong with me. And, if I was a better person, I'd have all the friends in the world. And so somehow this was a me problem. And I know now from reading up on this topic and talking openly about it, and from the clients that I've worked with, that it's not true. As many of our interactions move online, and there's this kind of global loneliness pandemic. And you'd think that we would feel more connected. But, Brené Brown calls this AI, artificial intimacy, and says that we have this illusion of connection, but at the end of the day, still sitting alone in my house at night watching TV. So it took me a lot to acknowledge that I needed to do something about filling my friendship dance card, as I like to call it. And by signing up for the free trial, it gave me the opportunity to have a look and see what might be on offer for me. And it was a pretty low bar to cross. I didn't have to organise anything. These events were run, and all I had to do was click going and show up. And I really, really enjoyed it. I got to meet some quite diverse women, and I got to have a lot of different experiences. So it was a really positive time. And if I'm honest, it wasn't always easy. I am an extrovert, so the turning up wasn't the hard part. Probably the harder part was sitting with my thoughts and feelings about being in a group of women I don't know. You know, I worried about not fitting in and feeling a little bit outside of the, not fitting in, I guess is probably the easiest way to say it. And, you know, there were lots of times when I was reminded of what I felt like as an adolescent, making new friends. It felt like schoolyard stuff again. Did you have times like that?
Yeah, it really reminds me of something Brené Brown said, that vulnerability is the courage to be open to other human beings. And I think when we're willing to show up as our true selves, and that's our flaws as well, and to create that space for meaningful connections, it feels counterintuitive, because if we pretend to be perfect, it pushes people away. We want to be the best person version of ourselves as well. So it's like we're going in, and I might just be, but I used to go in with this feeling of, I've got to be the best person I can be. But maybe I wasn't feeling great that day, or maybe there was something going on, but how can I go in and be vulnerable and being true? And I found the best experiences and the best friendships came from just being myself on that day. So if I'd had a shit day the day before, something had happened, that I wasn't going in there being miserable or anything. And I was, you know, I was reading the room and what the energy was like in the room, but I was also being myself and adding to that conversation. And as soon as I found that I opened up and I was authentic, or someone else would say, oh yeah, I felt like that. Oh yeah, you know, that's been going on for me. And that's when the true connection started. And that's when you met your people. And that's the friendships that have lasted from that moment. There's a couple of people, including yourself, that I've got long-lasting friendships with because of that vulnerability. But that's the hardest thing. I think, especially now I've got older, it's almost like society expects you to be this grown-up, I nearly swore, adult, you know, that knows everything, can do everything, and is this really strong person. You can't be vulnerable, you know, and you can't have a moment. And maybe I'm just putting that expectation on everybody else, or that judgment. I'm not sure, but it's having that ability to have that vulnerability, but it does feel so counterintuitive.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting you say that, because one of the things that I did later on in my time with Connected Women was run the Wisdom Well, and that was my effort to get past the sort of shallower conversations I was having with people at lunches and dinners and things like that. So I thought, how am I going to find my people? My people are people who like to connect more deeply than that. And so, you know, I decided to take the bull by the horns and create a space that I was going to enjoy. So a monthly discussion group for the deeper conversations and the deeper connections. And one of those discussion groups, we put up the topic of friendship. And in preparation for that, I started doing some reading, and I came across this amazing book, which I'll include a reference in the show notes, called Just Friends. And Just Friends introduced me to this idea called the liking gap. And it's this idea that we tend to overestimate the likelihood of being rejected when we first meet someone. So, and the more self-critical we are, the more pronounced that gap is. And there's this idea of this kind of prophecy. If we expect something, you know, won't go well, it's likely that it won't go well. And so combating that is this idea of always assuming people like you. So the acceptance prophecy. And although I was doing that reading for the group, I was really needing to take that on for myself, you know, channeling this mindset of it's okay. Well, I guess the reality is that not everybody's going to like you, but assume that people will like you, and things will go better.
I think when you turn up for events for like we did for Connected Women, I think you've just got to be your true self. So bring your natural energy of who you are. Be as confident as you can. Obviously, inside you might not feel confident, but just generally have no expectations and trust the process. And I know that could be very cliche, but it's so very true. I think that, you know, we go in there and we just be ourselves. And I think people accept us or not. I remember Steve saying to me something about, you might be, you know, it was peaches and apples, wasn't it? Was it something you said about peaches and apples? And you can be a peach and there might be an apple tree and you're not going to gel with those people, but it doesn't mean you're not a beautiful peach. And sometimes it's like, it doesn't work, but that's okay because you like being a peach.
Yeah. I think one of the things I found most surprising for myself was that one of the barriers for me for quite a while was being out as a lesbian. Mm-hmm. And I've always been out my whole life since my early 20s. Anywhere I've been very clear that that's who I am. And in my workplaces, in my friendship groups, in my sports clubs, wherever it's been necessary to just be myself, that's how it's been. And then I found myself sitting around the table with people who I didn't know, had no relationship with. And it's that thing about how much do I share, how much do I not? And it was something that I became increasingly uncomfortable and aware that I wasn't sharing. And I think it was because obviously I was worried about what the reaction was going to be. And eventually I just took the bull by the horns and must have referred to my partner as a she or something like that. And it was fine and everything went well and there was nothing to be concerned about. But I guess it's coming back to the point that you made, which is if you just be yourself, everything will be okay. And for me, what that meant was that there may be some people who didn't want to know me or sit around the table with me. In fact, there was quite some homophobic comments that came out of Connected Women dinners in other locations from mine. But the women I met were all absolutely and continue to be absolutely fine about who I am. And had I not taken that risk in sharing myself fully, who I am, then I don't think I could really have established or built real friendships, because essentially I'd be leaving out this really important part of who I am, which just wasn't going to wash.
It's really interesting to hear your point of view on that, because I remember when you did drop into conversation, your partner, and then I acknowledged, I thought, oh, okay, so it's a female partner. I never thought anything more of it. Just like, okay, fair enough. But when you were talking just now and I said, and you said that I said that everything would be okay. And sometimes it wasn't okay for you. And I just suddenly thought, oh shit, maybe sometimes it won't be okay. So we can be confident and we can be happy in our values and who we are and who our partner is. But some people might not accept that. So sometimes we would go for a lunch or a meeting, and you could feel there was friction within the group of our community that was in Sydney. And I don't know if that experience was, generic everywhere, but sometimes you could feel that we all had different views, and it was within those connections, how were we going to communicate that? And it was very interesting that we're all still working on that some people are able to communicate effectively and others sometimes were rubbing you up the wrong way. And it was, how do you respond to that as well? And that's all part of a friendship. So that was all part of learning to have those friendships again. Just like school, just like adolescence, and it's like going through that whole process again. How do I manage that? Oh, I've not experienced that for a while.
I totally agree, Sarah. And from my own experience, I've got, friend making for me, my most significant period of friend making was in my 20s and 30s. And as an extrovert, I spent a lot of time socializing. I had a lot of friends. I've carried a smaller group of core friends with me through my life. I've made some new friends over time through, spending time courtside at soccer games and netball and things like that. And that's been really delightful. But really making new friends again, I did feel a bit rusty, I have to say. So hearing you say, it was like reminding yourself of this is what it's like and this is what it takes was my experience as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's honing those skills again.
Yes.
I think sharing and communicating, just being vulnerable and allowing that, I think. I don't know, as I personally have got older, I think I've honed those skills, and then sometimes I think, no, I still need working on, and that's okay. I'm not a person that likes confrontation in any way, so if I'm confronted, I'm still learning those skills, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So that has been really interesting part of it, and a very valuable part of it, because the world we've got so many characters and beautiful people out there, and we're not all the same, and we are different, and that's what makes it so wonderful. And having the opportunity, to meet new people, we're very lucky.
Yeah, absolutely.
It might be hard, but overall, it's been so valuable. And like you say, we've got new friends. Because one of the things I found really hard was moving to a new country. My best friend was left in the UK. So you've got a time difference to navigate, and they don't stop being your best friend. It's just geographically, it makes it a little bit more difficult. And you make connections, and you have to work on that. It's not like you replace them and you've got a new best friend. It's that you've got like a network, which is beautiful around you, but everybody's can be quite different. I think sometimes if I had a party and put everybody in a room, I don't think they'd all get on, because they're all so different. I have friends for different things, and everybody's got different ways. And I think when you're feeling really outgoing and want to go out, and you have that friend. And then when you're feeling you want somebody that you're having that deep connection, that deep conversation, you go to a different friend, and maybe those two friends in a room probably wouldn't get on very well. And I love that. Yeah. I love that you've got that diversity of friends, and also that you don't have to be a friend forever. I used to find that very difficult, a concept of that people will come in and out of your life and not necessarily around forever. It doesn't mean you're falling out of friends with them. It just means you don't talk to them as often. So I don't talk to my best friend as often, but I know if I need her, she's always there.
Yeah. Let's come back to that question of friendships ending or changing significantly, because we've been talking about meeting new people and making friends, but then there's the process of really getting to know someone, and for them moving from being an acquaintance or a casual friend into a friend and then a good friend, and all of that takes a lot of time. And what I noticed through Connected Women, because it was really the events posted, you turn up and have dinner with with a group or whatever, was that what happened over time was that I was starting to look to see who was going to those dinners, because I wanted to catch up with that person. And then eventually it became much more, intentional and effortful on my part to make connection with those women who I was really connecting with, who was really enjoying their time, and making time for just us to catch up, so outside of that formalised group. So it did require me to push forward with an intentionality and some effort. And what I noticed over time with the women who I have made friends with is that it's has been as much about the quality of the time that we spend together as the amount of time. And so the deep conversations, as you're saying, there are other women I've met who would just love going to the theatre and singing along and having, fun times. And so it's different people, as you said, for different times. I think sharing honestly, as you said, is really critical. And the other things I would add is that staying the course with people. So being generous, if someone disappears out of your life for a little while, it could be for any reason, anything could be going on. So being prepared to be open to hear what's going on for them, that's happened, or showing forgiveness when things don't go well. So that kind of generosity in relation to the people who matter to us. And then the final thing I would add is something I see a fair amount with clients is that they'll talk to me about their friendship group, and there might be someone who they really care about, who they consider a good friend, but they'll say something like, but it's always me who organises the catch-ups, and I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to wait to hear from them. And I think to myself, well, in most relationships, there's someone who wipes the kitchen bench because the other one doesn't notice it needs wiping, or there's someone who puts the bins out and over time you fall into these roles that you just kind of synergistically work around each other and everybody contributes. And if you and your friends have fallen into a pattern of where you're the one who makes the reaches out first or takes responsibility for organising things, that's okay. Your friend's turning up and they're participating and enjoying your company as well. And if you're going to change that up and your expectation is that they're going to do more of that, it might be worth having a conversation with them, because otherwise they might think that you have let go of them as a friend because you're no longer making the effort that they've seen you make before. So I just say be a little bit careful about that. Treat people the way you want to be treated. If you enjoy someone else initiating events or catch-ups or whatever, be the one that offers that to your friends as well, and don't hold back.
I am going to be very curious now and ask you some questions in that. And it's along the lines of boundaries. Like, if you've got a friend that continually has that expectation that you arrange something and that you feel that it is one-sided, and it's hard sometimes to have that conversation, and you send the text message, and your text message is always like 5 lines long and their response is probably 1 line, and you are feeling it's a little bit one-sided. It's like, as a friend, and especially a new friend, how do you express those boundaries? How do you communicate that you're finding that difficult or you want things to change?
Well, I guess my response is that if the friendship matters, then you have a conversation about it. Hey, why am I doing this? No, you probably wouldn't say that. If it was my sister, I'd probably say something like that. Hey, you.
What's going on? I've done that. Do you know, I've done that a couple of times. And just recently I've done that in a new friendship round pickleball, funny enough. Here we go. And I started to spiral. I started to think in old ways around old friendships. And I purposely nipped it in the bud and went, I'm going to handle this different. I'm not going to spiral. I'm not going to overthink this. And I messaged that person and said, and I owned my feeling. I went, our last meeting, I felt like this. Am I overthinking this? So I completely put my vulnerability out. I was thinking, oh my God, she's going to think I'm like, not crazy, but she's going to think, oh God, this woman's hard work, or, oh wow, that's full on, you know? But it was one of the best things I could have done, because I just owned my feelings. She went, no, it wasn't like that at all. And like the conversation we had from that made our friendship stronger, because we then both got to know more about each other. Our values are very, very similar. And she says, no, I can actually feel like that sometimes too. And then I felt better, because I was like, oh, thank goodness, So as hard as those conversations are, especially with new friendships,
Mm.
that's what will leapfrog your friendship on faster, I think. And I'm
Yeah,
not going to say
absolutely.
you will have those outcomes every time. Sometimes, you'll have those conversations with people and you'll get a very negative response. I've had that before because that's the way life is. But once you know, you know. So you're not going to have a bad outcome because either it's a good friendship for you or it's not. But either way, it's a win-win because if it's not working for you, you found out soon enough.
Yeah.
So
And
you can't.
Sarah, can I just say, when you said that about what you'd said to your new friend, I thought, oh, this is why I'm friends with Sarah, because she's prepared to say things like that, and love that about you.
I'm an open book. Whatever I don't say, you can see it's written on my face. So I have to say it. I'm just like, you can say, are you okay? And I'll go, no, I'm not okay. But I think if I can't express myself now, I don't want friendships that I don't feel that I can express and be myself. I don't want to bottle everything up and then go away and overthink because life's too short for that. It's
Yeah.
like, no, my friendships are true and sincere. And, they don't have to have deep conversations. We've had conversations where we've just laughed about stupid things.
Yes.
And that's great. And we've also had those really deep, complex conversations as well. And that's the beauty of it, that we've got that diversity. And you can't ask for anything more in a friendship than that, I don't think.
Yeah, that's right. And I should say for people listening that you and I have been meeting online fortnightly for I don't know how long now, well over, would it be 18 months, 2 years?
Yes.
And met once in person.
Yes.
So friendships can take a whole range of forms, can't they?
Oh, they can. Oh, no, I just think that I think it's us allowing that to happen and trusting in the process. I always used to scoff at that, when people say trust in the process. Oh my God, it's so true.
Yeah. And I think it's not, but when you say that, I don't think it's about sitting back and expecting something to happen. It's about consistency, investing, so showing up, having agency, nurturing the friendship that you want to have with someone. So you and I have invested time in meeting together and, showing up for each other. So that's what gives someone a sign that you want to be their friend, isn't it?
I think a key thing for me is, and the thing I got into Connected Women for, is loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about being unseen. And I think that's fundamental, that when you've got to start having those connections with people, you feel seen and heard. And that was my whole thing with the herd hug. That's where the herd came in. Because it's when you have a friendship, you're having yourself reflected back to you in a lot of ways. And I think that is the key part of my connection and my friendships, be whoever I'm talking to, because they all are quite diverse. I always feel heard. And when I come away from it, there is that like virtual hug, if not a real hug in real life. Do you know what I mean? And that for me, mine is the friendship.
So you mentioned Help Herd Hug. Can you tell us about that and why you started that group or those meetings? It wasn't a group as such, was it?
Yeah, you touched on it earlier in that it was okay to meet up for coffees, but that could be quite superficial. And I wanted something a bit more I wanted something that was deeper, and I wanted people to know that they were seen and heard. That if they went for a coffee and someone just dropped into the conversation something and it didn't get picked up by somebody else, or it did, but it was quite superficial, that person just didn't drift off into the ether. I wanted them to have a place where they could come on an online meeting once a week and be themselves and just say, this is what's going on for me. And then someone else could say, oh, that happened to me last week. Or, you're not on your own with this. Tell us some more about that. How can we help you? What do you need? Just something with some depth. And that's why I set that up. And it was really interesting. We had such diverse conversations. You never knew what was going to happen. And that's what made it so much fun. But that was like a friendship. You know, you never know quite what people are going to bring. And I think it's, as I say, it's about being seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really important for me, because I don't think you need a whole crowd of people and hundreds of friends. You just need real connection. But I think you have to grow that. That's not a one-sided thing. And the more you put in, the more you'll get back. The more you're curious about somebody and you genuinely care, you will get that reciprocated. Unless they're not your person, unless that person is unable to do that at that time for whatever reason, you know? I'm not saying they're a bad person. They might have lots of things going on in their life. They haven't got the energy to have friends.
So we've talked then about kind of going a bit deeper and getting to know people and maintaining friendships. A common issue I see with my clients is the experience of letting friendships go. And, you know, I often talk to them about friends being for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And so the idea that we make a friend doesn't mean that we might not choose not to have them as a friend anymore, or that something happens, like you move overseas and the friendship takes on a different shape. There's a couple of ways this has come up for me, and one is this kind of a myth of the best friends, and the idea that if you're a best friend, you're going to be best friends forever, and that hasn't.
Wasn't there a bat that said "Be careful on it"?
Yeah.
And if you're not, you failed in some way. That's how I always see it. It's like, oh, well, I haven't got the badge, or I've got to cross off the F at the end because they're my best friend, but maybe it might not be forever, you know?
Well, I've certainly had I've had experiences where really significant friendships have ended for a whole variety of reasons. I've also had an experience where a friendship ended when my kids were really little and life was pretty tough, and there was a bit of an event that meant that we weren't friends anymore. And then 10 years later we met, and all of those tensions and pressures were gone from our lives, and we reconnected again in the most beautiful of ways. So for me, friendship can take many shapes and forms, and the idea that they take a particular shape forever is, I think, problematic. What do you think?
I would agree 100%, because I think it's our expectations. And I think going back as a child, I was like, if you lost a friend, it was the end of the world. You know, if you had a best friend, they were your best friend. And it was almost a failing if you lost a friend. You know, it's not what happened. You had really close groups as a child, and then it was learning how you grow and develop through that. So sometimes, and I think it's quite normal, we go back to those childhood feelings. We regress in some way, which is normal. And we think, oh, it's a failing because we've lost that friend. But no, it's like you said, you know, there's a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And that's okay, you know.
The other thing that some of my clients talk about is that in this process of reinvention after 50, where they're discovering new parts of themselves and wanting to bring new experiences into their lives, and they've got more time to do that because their kids are older, etc., that they feel like there's a little mismatch between some of their friends they've had for a long time and what they're needing for themselves in their life now. So it's there, and I guess I've certainly met some women that have let go of friendships because of that. Or the other scenario is where they have realised through the process of, you know, reconnecting with themselves in a different way at this life stage, that their friends have been unsuitable. So perhaps they haven't been as healthy friendship as is possible or available. And they reach that point of going, oh, look, this is just not working for me. I want something else. So there's lots of reasons that are really good reasons why we might end a friendship or lessen its importance in our life. And again, that's nothing to be ashamed or embarrassed about. And the fact that we might think of it as something shameful or embarrassing is, I think, tied up into this idea that we should be friends with someone forever. But actually, it makes sense to me that as we change, we have different needs and wants for our friends.
So sometimes you're going to work through it and you'll be like, okay, yeah, this person isn't for me. It's just like this part doesn't work. It doesn't make them a bad person.
Yeah.
It's just that you just don't connect. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, and the piece just doesn't fit. And no matter how you keep pressing them together, they're not fitting.
Yeah, that's right.
Either piece or wrong piece. It's just it doesn't fit in that part of the puzzle. They go on the other side of the puzzle, and you're on this side, and you make that complete, and they make it complete somewhere else. But you put your two pieces together, just doesn't work. And that's all right. They belong somewhere else.
Yeah. That's a better analogy than an apple and a pear, I think. But let's keep going. So, Sarah, before we finish today, I thought it might be helpful to share our top tips for what someone can do if they're feeling lonely. So why don't you kick us off? Where would you start?
I think it's start small. I think it's not have huge expectations, because it's like, I suppose it's the typical goal setting that if you try and do something that's huge, you're never going to do it. So it's just one small thing, even if it's just reaching out to an old friend, anything, but start somewhere.
I would echo that. I would absolutely say that starting somewhere is really important, because even if it's not something that really lights you up, or you discover it's not something you're enjoying, or you're not meeting people, every experience gives you exposure to people that gives potentially the opportunity to meet more people, and it's kind of that snowball effect. So I would say put yourself in places where you're going to meet someone who is likely to be good friend material. That's my expression, good friend material. Someone who perhaps has a common interest or a similar outlook. So that means, if you're a bookish person, joining a book group you're likely to meet your kind of person. If you're an art lover or an art person, or you enjoy the theatre, then going to volunteer at an art gallery or an arts festival, you're likely to meet the sort of people who are your kind of people. So it's put yourself in those sort of places. I would also say that there's something about adopting the positive mindset. So we've talked about the liking gap, and that it can be awkward and uncomfortable to be putting ourselves out there in terms of meeting new people, but it certainly ups your chances of meeting someone if you are prepared to put the awkward aside and bring your best self forward. Being active in the process, I think, is really important. So that's sort of aligned to what you were saying about the start somewhere, because if we wait to be asked, then it can compound our sense of loneliness. So taking responsibility for responding to our own needs, I feel lonely, or I need some more social connection, I think is take that message from ourselves and then do something about it.
Yeah, I think it's being open to experiment, that there's no such thing as failure. It's just feedback. So if you go into it and you go, right, I'm going to get to know this person, and it doesn't work out, then it was just an experiment. It was like, what's this person like? I'm just curious. And, you'll just get feedback on that, and then you can progress from there. But if you never start experimenting, then you get nowhere. You're just stuck.
I would add to that and say trust your instincts. So not everybody's going to be our person, but when you meet them, you really know. This is a shout out to my friend Meg, who I met through Connected Women, and she sat down at one of those dinner tables and we just immediately hit it off. And I was thinking in my head, oh, she's my kind of person. And, we're still good friends today, and that's been a very enjoyable process. And so not labouring over the people who don't feel quite like your kind of person, I think, is important as well. So trusting your instincts when you meet someone.
Because when you know because it's easy. You don't overthink. It's your conversations flow. You look at your watch and it's been 3 hours. You're like, oh my goodness, that was 5-minute conversation. But no, actually it was 3 hours. You never stop talking. You know it's easy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit like this conversation. Yeah, I feel like you and I could talk forever about friendship, and as we have done over time.
Yeah.
So I think it's also about consistency. So keep going. Remember that there are stages to friendship, and that, moving along from an acquaintance, I think I said this before, to a casual friend, and then friend to good friend, can take a really long time.
It's good that there are these stages, and yes, they can take time. Some are quick. It's like, I suppose, falling in love. There's a love at first sight kind of thing. Is there friendship at first sight? Is there any such? I bet there was, so maybe there is.
Sarah, thank you for joining me today for this wonderfully lively conversation, as I fully expected. In closing today, what's one thing you would like to change about how society sees women over 50?
I think I said about it before, and I would shout it out again, is just that woman wants to be feeling that she is seen in society. And then the connections with friends makes that stronger to be seen because you're in a group. And it's that confidence, because as we age, I feel like we almost disappear.
Well, I think that's the fear. It's the fear. Yeah.
Yes. But now when you go out, and I'm seeing it more and more, which is just amazing, is you see these groups of, I say in inverted commas, older women, however you want to class older women, having fun, beautiful friendships, having a real blast and a laugh out there. And that's how society for me is changing, because before it was like, that was a person knitting at home, looking after the grandchildren. It is changing, and it's changing for the better. And I think that's what's really exciting.
Sarah, thank you so much for being my guest today on Flourish After 50, and thank you for being my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Flourish After 50. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow in your favourite podcast app. I offer coaching and facilitate small group programs for women just like you, and have a newsletter where I share the details of upcoming events. All the links are available in the show notes. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep flourishing.